everybody, and welcome to another edition of our Journey Into Nyx Complete Set Review. We're going over all the blue cards today. I'm Evan Irwin.
I'm Brad Nelson.
All day. And
every day.
Every single one.
Unless you call me Bard Narson.
And that's only Todd Anderson. But we're going to talk about all the blue cards in the brand new set today. We're super excited to go over them. We start with the fuggliest picture of Thassa I've ever seen.
Oh,
not
that's
close.
Thassa?
That's Thassa.
Oh, see, I mean...
I don't know what... if it's not Thassa, I don't know what it's supposed to be.
I mean, the problem with Thassa is she takes a lot of selfies, so she always makes sure she looks good, right?
Let me take a selfie.
Yeah.
What? That's so ratchet.
All right.
Okay.
Anyway, we had our moment.
Fine. Aerial formation is an amazing way to end a limited game. This is a limited all-star. It's going to end games in style. You're going to love the ability for this to just, all my guys get flying to kill you.
What does this picture remind you of, though? Because the first time I saw this, it took me back to my teenage years, playing old Super Nintendo RPGs, and when they had levitation boots on, they were all at the same level.
Right.
They're all just perfect.
And their feet are kind of glowy,
Yeah, they're glowy. They're all on the same level, though. They're not floating. They're just always at that spot. They're even moving their legs, just staying in that spot. And that's it there. They're all at the same level, and they're all just floating. It's amazing. I love it.
So yes, it's going to trigger all your heroics. It's going to be great and limited. It's not going to touch constructed because Constructed has better things to do than these cards, but it is a fantastic blue card.
I think it's great just because it gives all your creatures evasion, and this is a perfect card for the blue-green heroic / bestow decks where just being able to pick up your whole team and attack or block or do something is going to be huge. It's not going to be that great in blue-white, but it's going to be a powerhouse in the green-blue decks.
Yeah, and the big, strong green fatties, and then you finally give them flying or evasion or whatever and get them. This is how you're going to win the game. Excellent card. Now, Battlefield Thaumaturge, I want to like this guy so hard. I don't see it. I am not a guy who sees this. Everyone is freaking out over this guy. I don't. I'm like, what is a blue deck? Why do they preface Mythic Mortars with this blue guy? So you can play it for 1 red. Now, that's powerful, but why don't you just pay 2 mana and kill the thing versus having the blue guy out?
And we also had that card. It was called Flame Slash.
And it was great. I mean,
and Mythic Mortars is better because it can be kicked.
Yeah, it can be overloaded as it needs to be.
Yeah.
This is one of those cards that everyone is like, I really like this card. I think this card is going to get constructed. And I'm like, I'm sorry. This is just one of those times where I just have a complete disconnect of what everyone is saying and what I'm feeling. And sometimes that's obviously wrong, and that's fine. But this card blows my mind. Am I alone? Is this guy good?
I don't think so. I do see. The joke, I was trying to make a joke so bad, but I had a brain fart. I can't remember the card name. But you remember that card from the red-white X card that you loved so much?
Oh, Aurelius Fury.
Yeah, it works so well with Aurelius Fury. It works with Clan Defiance too, though, right? Clan Defiance, if you have 3 targets, you just get a free roll for 3 damage.
Something like that.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, well, for each creature it targets, so it has to be a creature. The player doesn't get you a free roll.
Oh, true.
Which is fine. But again, this is one of those cards that for me, it requires it to be played, to live, and then it's going to do cool things. And I hope it gets there. I hope I'm proven wrong on this one because I don't think he's very good. I think in limited, he's terrific. He can both protect himself in a clever way. He's going to improve your ability to bestow, or I'm sorry, to cast instants and sorceries on your guy. The strive cards all get better with him, particularly the white release the fleet or what have you.
All of them get very good with him.
Yeah, they get absolutely terrific. So don't get me wrong there. All-star in limited. You're going to love this guy on the curve. He's going to do great things for all your spells. In constructed, everyone's like, this guy's got potential. And I'm like, I don't see it. No,
I'm a firm believer that in constructed, your card has to stand alone.
Right.
Unless the synergies are so powerful. And to be honest, in standard, Thoughtseize and Mutavault are stopping a lot of those synergies. So your cards need to do something on their own and be still good as top decks, or they're supposed to make all your other cards better. And this is kind of like a finisher / support card. It's trying to make other support cards better.
Yep.
So in a sense that it's just adding another tier of trying to make things synergistic, and that's a 3-card combo. So I don't think it's that good.
I mean, maybe blue, white, red gets there. Maybe there's some sort of American aggro where lightning strike becomes lightning bolt and all this other stuff, which sounds really sexy and cool. And then for me, I just imagine top decking this guy late and being like, I got a 2/1, dot.
I mean, maybe it's there. Maybe there's some counter burn deck we're not seeing, but for the most part, I don't think it's that good.
Yeah. Great and limited, though. all-star. Cloaked Siren, one of the best blue cards in limited. Like Breaching Hippocamp, I always felt it had flying. It looked to me like it had flying. It's jumping out of the water. It's in the air. Doesn't have flying. This guy actually has flying. I don't care about untapping another guy. I wanted to give it flying.
Yeah, I mean, I even thought that Breaching Hippocamp had flying because of how mediocre it was.
Right.
And yes, having a flash flyer is great, especially because cards like this help other cards with flash or instant speed spells. And so you're going to see when you play with this card that you're going to want to play more cards like Dissolve or other flash or tricks, or it really like hides a card like Divine Verdict, for example, where it just like you can say go with both in hand.
Right.
If they don't attack into your Divine Verdict, you can play this, or you can even bluff your Divine Verdict and you get a free roll of playing a creature and them not attacking you.
Absolutely. So Snapping Drake is a creature that you will play in limited pretty much every time, and they gave it flash.
Yeah, this is one of the pushed cards of the format. This is helping blue decks stabilize, so this is going to be one of the more powerful cards you can play.
Yeah, if you're in blue, you want to pick this early. This card is awesome. Counterman, not awesome. Not great. Not the worst thing in the world, particularly in sealed. And whenever we talk about counter spells, you kind of, by default go, well, in sealed, you're going to have a slower game. You want to stop their big fatties, blah, 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 blah. But there's actually a lot of cards, particularly in black, as it should be, that sort of raise dead, bring things back. There's green cards that bring things back. There's actually a potential that you will counter a bomb just to let them either get it back or let them use a spell that becomes better because you milled 4 cards for them.
Or, giving them 4 cards in the graveyard isn't the biggest deal, but it's not usually a huge thing. There are a lot of cards that do that now, but for the most part, because it's still a limited format, the numbers don't go up. So like the amount of cards that do this per capita are still the same or whatever.
Sure.
So you can't really make a theme of that now. Like there was the Undead Centaur or whatever, rescued Centaur or something. I don't remember.
Are you talking about like a mill strategy?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, in limited and sealed particularly, milling opponent 8 can sometimes kill them.
Sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And that's not the biggest deal, but a 4-mana counterspell that doesn't untap your lands, draw you a card, make them discard a card. This is one of the weaker, expensive counterspells I've seen in a set in a long time.
Yeah, it's made to be mediocre, and it got there.
They figured it out, how to make a mediocre magic card.
Sure
After
did.
all this time.
Oh man, took them so long. Crystalline Nautilus is awesome. I love this card. I love everything about this card. The way you can play it, the way it's a 3-mana 4/4. If you want it on the curve, 5 mana, tap their guy and kill it, and then you get a 4/4 out of it that they have to tap and or use a spell to get it. Like Leonin Snapcaster or Leonin, the 2-mana 2/1 when it enters the battlefield it taps a dude.
Oh yeah.
That guy's bad. You don't want to play against that guy with this card.
But yeah.
Or if you have that guy, this is the card you want to play with him.
I do like the idea of like you getting to put it on their guy and then immediately killing it with a trick.
Yep.
And you get your creature back, so you can turn a coordinated assault into a removal spell for that one turn.
Yep.
And that's a cool ability. Also, I thought about this card as like the potential of being like, the Live the Dream blue-white no creature control deck that you just board into 4 of these. Like some week somebody just does that, and it's not there to win the game, but it's there to just be a huge wall that also has power. I mean, a Plume Veil type effect where the opponent doesn't have any removal for it. Also, in Constructed, the thing about a card like this is it could potentially be playable because every card should theoretically kill it anyway if it's targeting, because it's either targeting for removal, and like decks don't run combat tricks, so I guess Selesnya Charm can now kill this.
Yeah, I mean, and the other way I guess you get blown out is probably Domri, Domri will make them fight, and then he'll kill it.
But usually that'll kill it anyway,
Usually, but sometimes you'll have to trade it, particularly as it's a 4/4. So that's where it can be a little bit worse. But certainly the design of this card is terrific. I love the thinking. I love and there's some more we'll get to. But the idea that Bestow is not just for your creatures, and Bestow can be more than just some random creature enchantment. They give them more power and toughness. Like that's where this set is really starting to shine.
Oh yeah, and I love Bestow. Right when it came out, I was like, Vigilance cool, flying is cool. But now that it's getting all these like can't block and getting the phantasmal.
Now they're getting creative with it. They're actually getting creative with it, and you get to see them sort of unleash the floodgates of cool ideas of what you can do. You guys are used to this. You know how these things work. Let's make it interesting.
And they're doing that.
And they have. And this card is great in limited. Dakra Mystic, I think, is very good in limited, because you can at least see what both you guys are drawing, or you can mill it. Oh, that's a sweet bomb. No thanks.
So Oh yeah, no, I mean, sure, it's a Magic card, but I just want to talk about the art for a second.
But well, yes, it's a Magic card.
Because when I first saw this card, I immediately got Cats in the Cradle stuck in my head, and it's just a Merfolk that's playing catch with his son, after a long time, because it just looks like it has 2 baseball mitts.
Okay.
Do you see it now?
I guess I
mean,
see.
that looks
Yes,
like a
I see
baseball
the
bat.
baseball mats of clam
It's just playing catch with his
oyster
son.
things that they got going on there, which is great. All right, so the Cat's in the Cradle, and this card's pretty sweet. I like this card. I actually feel it might have constructive possibilities. I kind of went a little overboard and thought that, Legacy or something silly because,
Legacy.
hey, I'm just saying.
Legacy.
Legacy. It is a Merfolk.
I mean, it is. It's a Merfolk.
hey, that's important.
So is True Name Nemesis.
It's true.
Delver Secrets.
I get it.
Show and tell.
Listen, I understand what you're saying.
Blindside Diamond.
I understand
These are
things.
cards that this would have to play against.
Okay, Brad, I'm not saying I'm right, or I was even correct to even go there. I'm saying that, I kind of went off the rails and said, well, in a world of Legacy, which, and I'm watching a lot of SCG Live, and I see more sort of game states kind of crawling out to attrition than I feel that many would expect in Legacy. Because you say to yourself, well, there's there's a perfect storm, and there's, show and tell, and blah, blah, blah. Why aren't games ending in 4 seconds? It's like, well, they don't. And if you get to a stalemate situation, the Dakra Mystic allows me to say like, oh, that's a Force of Will and that's a whatever. I'll take the Force of Will, thanks. I don't really care what you get. But I understand that's Magical Christmas Land. But in the world of Standard, if you're not curving out in the mono blue deck, being able to draw more cards and be able to get more tempo and be able to get more answers and or more threats, doesn't seem to be the worst in the world to me.
No, I mean, but then at the same time, like one of the greatest things about the mono blue deck is that they have a card called Biden of Thassa that you want your 1-drops to have flying.
Sure.
And to be honest, if this starts seeing play in the deck, I'm going to lose my mind because I always thought that the 1-drop sliver should have just been a 1-of in that deck, just for the fact of it makes your mutavolts have flying, so there's going to be some situations where that's really powerful. And it's a worse version of the other 2 creatures that cost 1, but it still has an upside. So like if people are just like now just slamming this in the deck as opposed to never trying that one before, I don't even know what to say.
I understand that we might need a world where Judge's Familiar does not exist in order for this to even be considered. I just feel like it's a really interesting card. It's a great ability. It's a draw for 1 mana that allows you to see what they're getting. If you're drawing gas and they're drawing a land, okay.
Oh yeah, I mean I think
right with
that
that.
This should at least draw you a better card than your opponent half the time, And I say you actually do put the cards in your hand at least 1/3 of the time.
Sure.
So this is a pretty good limited bomb. Like I really like this card. It comes down early, helps you manipulate, lets you see cards that they're getting. Like, you're going to want to take something powerful and give them something, so at least you know about it.
Right.
Even combat tricks you get to play around for the rest of the game. Like,
Right.
the card is good.
Yeah, I think, again, this card is not trash by any means. It's definitely playable. It's a good 1-drop. It can help you over time. And again, if you reveal gas and they reveal a land, whatever. I'll take it. Daring Thief. Interesting card.
It's finally one that I think is good enough to see limited play. They've made a lot of these cards switching and stuff like that, and
They've
it
all
gets
been really
confusing.
bad.
Yeah, like currency exchange. I didn't even know how that worked until I played it once, and I was just like, my deck is so bad, I need this.
Puka's Mischief.
Yeah, they're all just they're all just bad. But this one costs 3. It's inspired. It could potentially do something, and in this format alone, I think it is the biggest upside to play cards like this because of Bestow. For the fact that if you can ever get this tapped through a Springleaf Drum or some ability, a Retraction Helix, that when you untap it, you get to steal their guy that has all this Bestow. Yes, those are still their permanents, but because they're stuck to the creature,
Right.
you have the big guy, and you can give them, a bad 2/2 or one of your early drops. So, or even this card,
Right.
And I just love that this card changes how people will play out limited games, and that excites me.
Yeah, the game becomes around Daring Thief at that point. Like once you play Daring Thief, your opponent has to answer it or has to recognize that they're going to have to start losing things, and they're going to have to be on the worst side of those losing things. It's basically one of the best inspired creatures in the whole block, in my opinion. Painseer looks good and all, and is cute, but it's just a 2/2. Like 2/3 stats are actually very important.
I like the Gold Digger. We'll get to him tomorrow, but I like Gold Digger the most.
Gold Digger's cute, and we'll even talk about his flavor stuff, but whatever. Daring Thief, by and large, is very, very powerful and sort of warps the game around him, which makes him an incredibly awesome limited card. He's not going to be in there and constructed, though.
Oh, no.
Just don't see it ever. Dictate of Kruphix. amazing constructed, not probably great in limited, because if you start to go behind, if you start getting behind in limited and they start drawing too much gas, this card can actually be your downfall.
Yeah, it adds variance to limited, and so I would maybe bring this in when I feel like my deck needs a little bit of variance. But that's just what it's going to do in limited. I mean, giving both players 2 cards a turn is a downside. And yes, this is a Hollymine you can play on your opponent's turn, so then you get to draw first. But
everyone gets it.
The draw you get is a replacement, whereas theirs is a virtual card advantage, and they got to spend 3 mana on something else.
Right.
So you get a sense of parity, but it actually isn't parity. You're still behind by casting the Hollymine first, even if you get to draw first.
Yeah, this is one of those, it's really interesting to me that there's the dynamic of standard where there's an incredibly high power level and this card shines. And there's the dynamic of limited where the power level is a little flatter and this card gets worse as a result. Because when it gets flatter, the cards start to be more comparable. And if you're like, land, and you're like, all right, go. And they're like, decent creature, they're now way ahead of you. And that can steamroll in ways that in standard, you're like, oh, sweet, Supreme Verdict, whatever. Because you have these big swingy cards that are very powerful effects. So by that token, you kind of would rare draft this, then you would actually be excited to play it.
And you want it, and it's good in constructed because every other deck that has to run enablers like Sylvan Caryatids and Judge's Familiars and things like that when they draw aren't that great, but you're a control deck that all you are is reactive spells, and sometimes you can ignore things and then Supreme Verdict them away. Whereas in limited, there isn't a lot of enablers. There's just tricks and creatures.
Right.
So you're not going to see that. It just adds a lot of variance to limited, something that I personally don't want to do. So
it's too dangerous for me to touch in limited, essentially, unless you're just crazy behind and this is the only thing that you feel can actually get you out of it.
Yep.
And that's, in that case, you're probably losing anyway. Font of Fortunes, it's a card for Constellation. This is a card for you to be able to trigger things on playing enchantments, which is great, because otherwise it's a pretty crappy rate for, what is essentially divination.
And we've already seen Read the Bones in the first set, Divination in the second set, now we get this. And both those cards, like, Read the Bones is the best by far, but, like, Divination, a lot of people think is a trap and limited, like, you're not supposed to even play it, and that costs 1 mana less than this. So I don't really see this card being that great. It does come down on turn 2, and then you can invest it whenever you want, but that's just it. You spent your 2-drop not doing anything, and then you have to invest more mana later in the game to draw 2 cards. I don't think 4 mana is worth it. Inspiration is not that good.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, it looks good because, drawing cards always looks good, always feels good, but that doesn't mean, particularly in a tempo-based format, that investing 4 mana before you get anything out of it, unless you have some sweet Constellation triggers or something, that this really won't get there.
Yep.
Meh. God Hunter Octopus. Yeah, God Hunter. It's a sweet name. Sweet name.
I don't see why it has to cost 6.
I mean, this is the blue fatty,
Yeah.
a 6 mana, whatever, 5/5, sometimes 6/6, depends on what it is, and there's always some ridiculous drawback. And for blue, sometimes they need islands, and this time they need enchantments.
Doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, it's cool that you can enchant one of their things with a Bestow creature or anything else, and sort of turn on God Hunter Octopus. I think that's a cool angle. Or an enchanted permanent is a cool little phrase.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, I understand it, but like, I wouldn't want to play a card like this because 6 mana for a 5/5 body isn't good. Usually, these blue creatures are in formats where them blocking is good enough, and then when you get to attack, it's an upside.
Right.
And you need to stabilize, but this isn't the format for that. Like, 6 mana for a 5/5 is so below the curve for every other, like the green decks and the red decks and things like that, that I just don't see this seeing a lot of play. I think it's going to just be in your sideboard a lot of times. You're going to get it 13th, 14th pick.
Yeah, you don't really want to play this unless you absolutely have to, and if you do, your deck's probably bad.
Yeah, and you should have just taken the 4/4 flying Chimera.
Now, on the other half, holy crap, Hour of Need is insane. Yeah. Absolutely bonkers, crazy good and limited. I cannot believe this card when I saw it. And then I was like, oh my God, it's so amazing. And then it's an instant. Like,
oh yeah,
really? Wizards? Seriously? At the end of my turn, I'll just make air elementals? Like, wow.
Even at the sense of like this, the way that I see this card is like you play a 2-drop. They play a 2-drop. You attack with yours. They can't block because you can have a combat trick. You say go. They attack with their 2-drop, and then you just make a 4/4 and block it. And yes, you killed your own creature, but you killed their creature, and now you have a 4/4 elemental. Or if they don't have a lot of removal, you can just make invest 2 cards into just a turn 3 4/4 flyer. That's huge.
That's insane. That's terrific. Like this, the rate of this thing is amazing. The fact, like, you know, they don't go away at end of turn or something silly. Like, you know, you get to keep them. They're just your air elementals. You just get to hold them and squeeze them and call them George and beat the living crap out of your opponent with them. Absolutely huge first pick slam, awesome card of awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it blows them out in combat. They might like exhaust all their tricks to like tap your guys or move some of your guys. And yes, you can in response like make a guy that they're killing a 4/4, but you can also just wait for them to attack and blow them out because you get to make 4/4s, block anything that won't kill them, and then swing back for the win.
Absolutely. There ain't nothing wrong with this card in limited and constructed. Strangely enough, probably not ever going to get there. Just one of those cards that. No. Some cards just live in their own worlds, you know, and this is a card that in limited, it is the king stuff.
Oh, for sure. This is going to be awesome.
Unbelievably awesome. Speaking of awesome cards in limited, Hubris is amazing. I love the name. I like the artwork. I love the flavor text. I think it's amazing. You wish to learn of Nyx? Very well. Bye. Awesome. Love it. Awesome.
I mean, the only flavor problem I have with it is like, you know, your hubris will start showing when you get all this armor and you're beefy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like you should lose that armor. You shouldn't get it back.
Well, I mean, but again, it's, you know, but it does return all of it. So it's not like it leaves it. It, you know, it doesn't say return the creature. It returns the creature and everything else that you thought was all like shiny and cool and all pimped out. Like this card
I guess returning it to your hand is better than putting it into play.
Right. Now, because this returns all the auras, that means when they put in all that mana to bestow, they're great, you know, they're sweet, awesome thing. You just bounce all of it. Not only the original creature and the bestow creature, and you get to swing back.
And you have to worry about it in play.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. They don't bestow out to the battlefield. Unbelievable. Amazing limited card. I love it. Hypnotic Siren. Speaking, we're just getting like hit after hit after hit here.
Blue got good.
Blue got seriously good. This thing is a first pick slam dunk card. It's fantastic. It's control magic. You're never going to not love control magic. And not only that, it makes the creature bigger. And when they kill the thing, you still get a 1/1 flyer that you can still put stuff on if you want to. Fantastic card.
And I mean, I kind of wish it was a fairy because fairies are the manipulative kind of things. But I do like on the art that it's just like making the ogre fall off the cliff. At least that's what it looks like. It's doing. Yeah. And I love that because this card is good. I think there is a potential of a mono blue deck that plays this over some of its 1-drop. So then the Nykthos Shrine to Nyx actually does something relevant in the deck.
Sure.
And just stealing a guy in the middle of the game seems very beneficial, especially since there's no real way to kill this in most decks that have creatures besides just killing the creature, and then you have your 1/1 fairy.
Absolutely, yeah. This is, I would not be surprised to see this constructed at all. The Eidolon of Blossoms we'll get to later, and this is, you know, basically one of the very few 1-mana enchantment creatures, and not only is it good, it's awesome.
Yep.
Very, very good. Love that card. Interpret the Signs.
No.
Jeez.
Just no.
Don't you know me? Don't you know me? His card is awesome.
No.
No, what?
No.
Oh, get out.
If it said this was just the sorcery speed opportunity, I would still say no in limited because limited's all about getting on the board and killing people.
Well, it was. Now we got to remember that the format is going to change.
No.
This card is sick. It's seriously sweet. I mean, it's not as good as some others, you know, I get it, but it's really good. You're probably going to draw 4 to 6 cards depending on what your deck's made of.
That means that you had 2 6-drops in your deck. No.
In a green-blue deck, it would be awesome.
No, I want to play a big green beefy monster or bestow on my guy and keep attacking.
And instead, I want to reveal that monster and be like, draw all the cards, and then I got all the power next turn.
Don't you love drawing cards, and then when your opponent kills you, you just theoretically didn't draw any cards because they're all just stuck in your hand and you didn't win the game?
Mine ain't gonna stuck. I get to play stuff.
You could board this card in slow, grindy, control-ish mirrors where both players don't have a lot of early game or both players like board stall out a lot of the times. This card is...
You run this thing. You see what happens. You're going to draw 4 to 5 cards in this thing. It's going to be awesome.
I will pie bet you, and we'll just put this to a vote. We'll just go get a poll and be like, is this a good limited card or not?
No, then the poll becomes, do I want to see Evan get more pie in face? I'm like, yes. That's what happens.
Even Luis Scott Vargas is going to be like, Brad's right.
Exactly. Brad, sure, whatever. I'm just saying, I like this card a lot in limited. I think it's going to be really sweet. Make your mind up. Feel free to test it out and see who is correct here. Because
don't test it out. Just trust me.
Now in draft, it's not going to be as good. Now I will give you that absolutely. But in seal, this thing is fantastic.
No,
fantastic. You'll see. Curious Dismissal, speaking of a fantastic card, jeez, one if another. Wizards, you just gave the juice to blue because Curious Dismissal is awesome in limited. Fan-freaking-tastic. Return all that random crap. They attack with a guy that has Bestow on it. You're just like, no, return the Bestow creature and blow you out. Like, this card does all the good things at instant speed.
And if you have enchant creatures, you can like run the blocks and then like bounce it as a chump blocker and like a bunch of like bestowed creatures or just the enchantments on those creatures to shrink them to kill them in combat.
Get more constellation triggers out of this thing. Like, there's a lot of ways that you're able to make Curious Dismissal be amazing, both for you, whether it's in combat or it's not in combat, at the end of their turn, I want to do this trigger thing, I want to do this cool little trick. Like, this has a lot of possibilities. It is very, very good and limited.
Yeah, very, very powerful. And I like that its power is only as good as the situation it's in, so sometimes it's going to be bad, and I like that about this card. It's not always just a blowout, so there's going to be times that you should remember to board this out. Like if you're playing against a green-blue deck that's just voyaging Satyr into big green creatures, it's probably not going to do anything, but against a lot of heroic decks, I could see it potentially being good.
Absolutely. The card is sweet. Pinned to the earth. Seriously, Wizards, it doesn't remove flying. The guy is pinned to the earth.
That is...
Yet it could still fly. Wizards, come on, man.
That is a flavor foul.
I know, right? Yeah. Like, did you look at the picture that you commissioned? Did you look at the name that you called it? Because that doesn't make any sense to me. The flying guy still has flying even if he's pinned to the earth. Yeah, right. Fail. Okay? Fail. That said, good limited card because it stops the stupid battle cruiser things that they've got against you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just great. Like, sometimes you don't want to kill them because then they get all these other creatures and maybe you're behind on tempo. So this does do that. It's not a card that I'm going to want to play all the time because if you hit a big creature, then they just have a big blocker now and you invested a card into it and it's still interacting with the game. But it's still a very good removal spell if you don't have a lot.
Right. I mean, the way that I can see this being sort of at its best is when you're able to stop a ground pounder that has a bunch of Bestow creatures on top of it, but you have an evasive flyer or you have something that's unblockable or whatever, and so you're fine giving them some huge wall, essentially, or some like, a 2/7 or whatever it is, just so you can get across with your flyers or your evasive guys.
I completely agree.
Super sweet card. Speaking of, oh my God! One after another Polymorphous Rush, sweet super bores all up in your face doing things.
Well,
limited bomb. Love it.
I mean, if you see, there's just two of everything. This is just, the arc.
Ooh, like I saw what you did there.
Yeah, there's two of everything.
Bringing it old school.
Yeah, but I do like this card. It seems really interesting. It could be really cool
Card is awesome. Yes, it's a bad mirror weave. I get it. But that doesn't mean it's not going to trigger all your heroic. Doesn't mean it's not going to be able to, copy the best thing on the battlefield. And it doesn't mean that it's not just going to win the game auto-magically. When they go, okay, no blocks, and you go, all right, I'll just copy your Arbor Colossus or whatever it is. Sure.
Yeah, I totally misread this card. I thought, I was confusing with the red one that makes copies.
Correct, which is not as good. This thing, way better, super huge bomb. You will absolutely love it. It's a first pick card in my opinion because whatever the best thing they're doing, whatever you have on the battlefield there at that point, it is going to be that.
Well, it has to be a combat trick because it is until end of turn.
Sure.
So it just has to happen that turn. So
yeah, absolutely. I just feel like it's still a huge blowout. Again, it's another strive card that you're just, you're just going to wipe out everything with it.
Also, because of +1/+1 counters, all those guys get a little bit better than the best thing on the board. So that's a huge benefit too.
Absolutely. So, yes, you have an Arbor Colossus, but my Arbor Colossus has +1/+1 counters on it now. Thanks. Card is awesome. Pull from the deep. All right, well, we had to get a mediocre card, and here we are.
I mean, we had to get just another card that helps people do awesome combos in other formats. That's what I feel like this card is. This card could be just a sweet commander card, just getting back. Like that format, you only get one of each card. So effects like this that not only draw cards, but draw the ones you want from your graveyard are pretty cool. That said, it won't see constructed play.
No, absolutely not. Now, in limited...
Maybe.
Well, maybe. It depends, like as a one-of in the Storm deck or something silly.
A one-of against control to be able to get back your Sphinx's Revelation and your Divination or your Supreme Verdict against a mono black control deck, or even Revoke to get rid of an Underworld Connections.
Maybe. I can see it maybe as a sideboard type thing when you're in a long attrition-filled matchup or what have you. In limited, it's okay. It's one of those where, yes, in a perfect world, you're going to get back a removal spell and you're going to get back a sorcery, something or other, maybe like a Strive card and something else. But,
yeah, I just want to beat face. I want to put bestow creatures onto other creatures. I mean, Wizards, you've reformed me. I just want to win games by attacking and making the best board position I can possibly have.
Well, I mean, they've constructed, or they've sort of crafted a lot of formats to where these are not powerful, unbelievably amazing cards. Like they're okay, and you're probably going to spend most of your turn playing this spell to get all these things back.
Also, they've learned to exile anything that returns multiple cards from the graveyard, so we can't just make chains of things.
Exactly. Can't pull from the deep, you're pulling from the deeps, and yada, yada,
Can't witness back your rescue from the underworld.
Exactly. Now, Riptide Chimera, I remember Esperzoa, and Esperzoa was sick. And this is Esperzoa's big buddy.
It is, but that format, if you remember, had like artifact lands. It had 1 and 2 drops. There was just more of them. The problem with this card is there's not a lot of 1 drops that are going to help you keep this in play.
They didn't have artifact lands and shards.
Well, they didn't have artifact lands, but
They had lots of artifacts.
Well, they had theoretical artifact lands in the sense of the...
Well, but I mean, at the same time, like we have lots and lots of enchantments, and we have lots of enchantments. We have the constellation stuff that you want to be able to play it and replay it and replay it. And we're going to get to another one of those cards here in just a second. But I think a 3/4 flyer for 3 that allows you to get bonuses or pick up your bestow creature and then bestow it on Riptide Chimera and whatever. Like this guy has a lot of potential.
He does have potential. I'm gonna stay away from him until I get beat by him.
You will.
Well, I'll wait for that day.
Card's sweet.
You bring it to me, then I might
love
change.
that card in limited. Rise of Eagles is one of those weird cards that when you have one of them, when you have 2 of them, you're like, It's much like that 7-drop white guy, where one of them is fantastic at the top of your curve, where you want to be, what you want to do, it feels good, and the second copy is just too much.
Well, I mean, I'm on the same side that I feel like this card is kind of overcosted for the sense of.
Talrand's Invocation basically spoiled you.
Yes,
for lack of a better term.
Even for limited 6 mana for 2/2 flyers in this format doesn't seem that great because at that point in the game, I feel like whoever has the biggest creatures is winning already.
Yep.
And so someone should already have big creatures, and you're supposed to, the game's supposed to center around that effect of dealing with big creatures and making your own big creatures. And yes, that's not how every game plays out, but when they don't play out that way, people are playing cards like Nissi and Asp and big creatures that also just brickwall 2 birds. So I just don't feel like these 2 birds are going to have a lot of impact on a game.
I think there's a reason this is common and not uncommon. Like if this were really, really good in the format, I think it would be uncommon. But as a common, it's like, well, sure, whatever. Because there's so much monstrosity, there's so much bestowing, there's so much sort of build your own battle cruiser type magic stuff going on where like, you can get 2 birds and scry. Now this is going to be a great top deck late in the game when you're kind of stalled out and you want to be able to play some dudes and figure out what you're drawing next turn. But by and large, it's not going to be good enough.
I completely agree.
Sage of Hours, a super sweet mythic. Congratulations, Wizards. You know how to make super sweet mythics, and this is what they look like.
Yes, not only is the art awesome, the effect is really sweet, and it's powerful. I did a versus video with it, and Todd and I were blown away by actually how relevant and how good the ability was. Like,
really?
It won a lot of games. Just being able to like, okay, I got my 5 counters, take them off, kill you. And set up those board positions. So like this fit in the red, blue, white heroic deck pretty well. And I would not be surprised that if this doesn't just become a very fringe standard playable deck, nothing like, you're not going to see it like, Owen Turtenwald wins another Grand Prix with this, or sure. I'm not going to top 8 with this card. I'm just not going to take this to a pro or a
Are you
Grand
sure?
Prix. I'm pretty sure.
Would you hate to say something like that and then later win a Grand Prix with this card?
True, yeah. Don't hold me to that. Don't hold me to it.
That's the part of thinking you're like, yeah, I took down an open with Sage of Hours because I found a really sweet blue-white aggro deck and it has the Battle Mage Thaumaturge so it can prove me wrong. It has Sage of Hours and so it proves you wrong and blah, blah, blah. So,
This is going to be a fun deck for FNM though. I really do believe it.
Wizards pushed this in just the right way. It looks sweet. It plays great. I love it.
Yeah, it's one of the sweetest arts because it just has so much going on. I love the card. I think it's very good.
Yeah, even in limited, you're going to have plenty of ways of triggering it. You're going to have plenty of ways to sort of abuse it, and it does become a legitimate threat.
In limited, this is a windmill slam because you can just get enough counters on it to just win the game because of all of the other things going on in the game. Plus, it's just a 2-mana heroic creature. Those are already good. Just putting counters on this guy is enough without the other ability.
Absolutely. I mean, he is going to grow to a huge status regardless. If he just becomes a 5/5 and smashing, okay, sweet. Yeah. He doesn't have to take extra turns to be awesome.
That was the joke before I played with it. I'm like, I'm going to make counters and win the game with an extra turn. Or with my 6/6 creature.
Or just kill you with it. Scourge of Fleets is amazing in limited, one of the biggest limited bombs. If you play a 7-mana 6/6 and this ability doesn't basically win you the game or just return most of what they got to their hand, something is going terribly wrong for you.
Yeah, I mean, this was a long time ago. This is right when I started playing Magic, but there's this card called Upheaval. And now there's a creature that does that to your opponent. And the great thing about that is, like, yeah, sure, maybe you're going to be able to get the toughness bigger than the amount of islands in play, but if you're playing a deck base blue with just a splash,
Sure.
or even, I mean, this could maybe try to make me force mono blue, just in the sense that, like, if I ever cast this, I'm going to win the game.
Yeah, like they're going to be so far behind. Like they can't recast everything they have. You're going to have a 6/6. You obviously have something else going on by the time you get to 7 mana.
You might even Alpha Strike them on that turn.
Absolutely. So this guy for me is way better than the white guy. The white guy puts him in the bottom, you know, under the deck or whatever in the middle of the deck. That's great. But this guy can return multiple creatures all at the same time in an Alpha Strike turn. Fantastic and limited. There's a reason it's rare.
This is what, like, Krakens feel like to me.
Exactly. Now, Sigil Starfish, a.k.a. Patrick Scryfish, because he is Patrick Scryfish.
Oh, well, I guess we'll
what he
see
needs
those
to be.
altars once they come out.
Oh, yeah. I already posted one in my Magic show when I talked about him. Somebody had already mocked one up or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, Patrick Scryfish is awesome and limited. He is a terrific card. He's great to block early. He provides you value all throughout the game. You can bestow on him. You can do things with him. Awesome guy.
I mean, he just makes what I can't even remember. Witch's Eye look so bad now.
Yeah, which is bad.
But no, I think this card is great and limited. Just scrying one every turn is great. Like, you're just going to be able to always block if there's a creature to block, but if not, you just can stop drawing lands.
Right.
And stop drawing lands and limited. I mean, we know how powerful Thassa's ability is. Everyone just didn't understand that scrying every turn
It's
just
very, very
is so
powerful.
insane. And this is something you can do in limited much easier. So
Right, and even us, you know, I think like what we learned from Thassa was like, hey, that ability is ridiculous, so you should respect it.
same
And
with
we-
temples.
Yeah, and so when you put it on an 0/3, you know, at the end of your turn, okay, great, nah, I don't want that, sweet. So, you know, you kind of have a mini Thassa-esque, it's blocking all their 1-power, 2-power guys, whatever. Lots of goodness in this card.
Oh yeah, and even in the late game when when its body isn't relevant, its ability is.
Yeah. Now, I wouldn't go too far in playing multiples of this guy. This is not something you want 2s and 3s of, but, you know, I definitely think it fits in on the curve and helps you in the
Well,
late
I
game.
do believe, isn't there a card in this set that when you scry, you can deal 2 damage?
That card is bad, seriously terrible, and we'll talk about it in red.
Once you've drafted too many times, that'll be something that you try to do.
Once you sort of like, okay, I've done this deck, and I've done this archetype, like, let's get crazy because no one wants those cards but you.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we'll talk about that later. Now, Thassa's Devourer, which is neat.
Here's your mill strategy.
This is the mill strategy coming up. You know, someone's going to want to draft it, and I really appreciate the fact that Wizards does kind of put those things in there.
Yep.
It's fringe. You're going to need all the things to fall in the right place, but if they do, you're going to be the mill guy, and you're going to crush everybody because no one saw it coming.
Yeah, because you just like pick up a couple of these, and they have big toughness, so they can block. And then the second one mills 4, and then every enchantment you play costs mills 4. And the other surprising ability that a card like this has is because when it's in play, it's much easier to turn on than other cards. That when your opponent scries and keeps on top, you're just like, no.
Don't think so. Let's do this. No thanks. And it's also interesting that it's a 2/6. You know, like they know, Wizards knows that if you're going to be the mill deck guy, you're going to have some serious walls to sit back
And
and
you're going to
hold
have to
behind.
block, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have to block, and that's what this guy does. So it's really interesting the sort of the little tweaks that Wizards puts in there. So when you get a little bored, you know, just doing the white green heroic aggro thing or the white blue whatever, you can go a little out there. Someone's going to pass you Phoenix, and you're going to be like,
I mean, like, well, Phoenix is just a win on its own, but
just saying.
But like the thing about limited to be honest is like draft is that it's a self-correcting game in itself. So when everyone's trying to draft these heroic decks and all that, like a deck like this is going to slip through the cracks. And if you're the one just picking it up right away, you can just have the most absurd deck on the table.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
unbelievable deck.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen people, you know, like, well, 3 of us was in black or X of us was in this archetype or whatever. And you're like, well, I was the mill guy, so it was all good for me.
Yeah, and you just pick up a couple Voyages then at the end of the draft in Theros, and all of a sudden you can bounce, keep yourself alive, get these start going, and the game just snowballs from there.
Absolutely. A much better card than it looks on the surface. However, if you're not that guy and you're not sort of going with that strategy, this card's not that great at all. Thassa's Ire. Ugh. Bad. You got to get some sick inspired triggers. 4 mana to tap their guy is okay. Is okay. Not great, but okay.
I think it's going to be okay. It's not going to be something you always want, but like against a heroic deck that has a lot of Bestow, this is the kind of card a blue deck sometimes wants. I mean, I do understand that Sudden Storm, Griptide, and Voyage's End are better cards, and those are cards that you're going to play over. But if you don't get access to cards like that, I can see playing one of these, especially if your curve is very low and you're more of a beat-down white-blue deck, and you just need ways to interact with opponent. For 5 mana, you can keep a guy tapped, and you can tap it before they attack, and then they can't block with it. So, like, that's always a huge upswing.
I mean, ironically, if you go back to Thassa's Devour, this is the greatest card to play alongside Thassa's Devour, because what you want to do in the mill deck is you just want to hold them off. Just give me a few more turns. Just let me play this thing and mill you 2. Tap your best card that you've got all these Bestow things onto. Like, just give me some time, give me some time. By and large, not great, because there's so many better options even in this same block.
Well, there's also better options as mana sinks, and mana sinks are always important and limited. And in the set, you just have Bestow creatures, which are early creatures you can play, but once the late game comes, you can invest more mana into them to make them better. So by and large, that's already in mana sinks.
Yeah, there's going to be some sweet sealed pools where we talk about the Gold King guy. What's his name? Makar or something.
The Gold Digger.
Yeah, but where you can have essentially once you have 8 mana, you're just able to just like fire him off because you tap him and you untap him.
That's also really cool. I never thought about that. Just being able to tap your inspired guys too.
Yeah, and then untap them. So that's really cool. And
this set has a lot of goofy stuff going on.
I know it really does. There's a lot of sort of like cards that are like that card's bad, but in this scenario it's amazing, but it's kind of bad overall, and it kind of goes ups and downs in that way. And that to me is the best type of set design, where it's not just one thing or another. It's not clear cut. You want to be able to play with these cards and be able to sort of feel them out a little bit. And the best that we can do is essentially try to give you some idea of perspective, history-wise, possibility in the block-wise and synergy-wise, and be able to let you guys sort of figure it out on your own. Triton Cavalry is really sweet. Actually kind of a Mana War-esque card in the blue-white heroic deck.
Yeah, I mean, the white version can theoretically be better, but I like how this card can let you like kind of go off with like the small like cantripy enchantments. And so
this card gives you a lot of tempo.
Yes.
It really does.
Or creates card advantage just by simply like, I can't remember all their names, but there's 2 different ones. There's the one that enchants a creature, draws a card, and then when it dies it draws a card or gives them flying.
Fate Foretold is that one.
Fate Foretold, and then the one that gives them flying.
I can't remember the one that gives them flying, but I remember Fate Foretold because that card's sick.
Yeah, and if you just keep targeting and bouncing them, or just changing it up or stopping your opponents, like this card is just going to be just as good as the 3/2 white guy.
Right, because it's not just quite like, it doesn't always have to be sort of a mana war. It could be, well, I'm sort of abusing my own enchantment thing to get value out of that, or I'm abusing my own enchantment thing to get constellation triggers or what have you. So, this card has a ton of play. It's got great stats. It has the Pillar-Filled Ox stats, So I'll take my blue Pillar-Filled Ox stats that do great things.
Yeah, only issue I have with it is there's a lot of 2/4 good blue creatures, and like there's just a lot of that effect.
There is a lot. It's going to be hard to let this guy shine, but because there's so many enchantment creatures in this set, and everyone's going to be playing with so many enchant creatures and bestowing things and yada yada, I think this guy is better than your average Ox.
Oh, this is a first pick for sure.
Very good. Triton Shorestalker.
I mean, we've had these kind of effects before. This is probably the most pushed one because it doesn't need an island or anything. It just can't be blocked.
Just good old-fashioned 1/1 Merfolk.
But it's an invisible stalker that can be targeted.
Yep, which makes it not great.
Yep.
My favorite thing about this card is that it calls a human Drywalker.
Drywalker?
Who will miss you, Drywalker? A wife? A child? Perhaps they will blame the sea for your fate and teach future generations to stay far away from it. And that's the coolest thing about this card.
For sure.
Warwing Siren. I think this card is awesome. I think it's the Wingsteed Rider in blue. I think it's a first pick card. I think it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, I mean it is just going to be a first pickable card for the fact that Wingsteed Riders is as well. I think Wingsteed Riders is better on its own, but it costs double white, which is always a problem. But because this card only costs single blue, they go well together. They complement each other in the 9 planes, 8 islands, or 10 planes, 7 island, blue-white aggro deck. So just getting more flyers early that have heroic for +1/+1 counters is beautiful.
Play this in limited, always, always. It is one of the best blue limited cards in the set. Whitewater Naiads. I actually think this is also, again, the blue limited cards in the set are freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Because this card is awesome. And the number one creature you're going to give unblockability to is itself.
Well, yeah.
Like, I'll just get in for 4.
What's happening with this set is before with Theros Born of the Gods, blue was always just the support color. It was never just the standalone. It was either base green with a splash of blue, or white with a splash of blue, or even black blue control decks. Red blue was bad. But now this set gives it its own standalone spell. So you can start with blue cards and stick with the blue cards. And I think that's really where they're evolving. And I think it's a very smart move. You can just tell that this is something Wizards thinks about. And that's just awesome. The more I do the set reviews, the more I play Magic, the more I realize that they actually know what they're doing.
Yeah, the more we the more I think you and I we sort of see the gears turning in the background. And I think part of our job in these reviews is sort of explain, like, hey, we've not only seen this before, we know why they're doing these things. And be able to, bestow a Boon Satyr on this guy and then give himself unblockability and ate ya, is awesome. I think it's great. I think this card is sweet. It has all the sweet interactions and is a very high pick card.
Well, and it keeps the pressure on, because the thing about playing 5-drops in a blue deck is that your opponent probably played a creature bigger than your last creature. So you can either bestow, threaten to play a trick, or play your own creature for the turn. And in most of those situations, you can't attack if you just play a creature. But this guy has good abilities. You're paying 5 mana for 4/4, not bad. But it gives something evasion immediately, so you don't lose the tempo or the damage race.
Right, you're not just be like, okay, I'll play a 5 mana 4/4, go. You're like, no, 5 mana 4/4, you can't block this guy. Let's keep the race going. Let's keep you worried and on the back foot about what's going to happen next turn when I'm able to play 2 enchantments, and then this gets unblockability, and then the other thing got unblockability again.
Yeah.
Super, super sweet and limited. Now, Disciple of Deceit is terabad, in my opinion, but the most interesting thought exercise for this card is that if it said tap, it would be the most broken spell ever and would be a legacy staple forever.
I did not spend at least 5 hours trying to build decks with this in Spring Lake Drum. I promise you. That was not a thing. I did not have 5 different 4-drops that potentially comboed. And I did not build a deck with this, Obsidian and Obsidian's Aid, and then realized I could just cast the Obsidian. I was like, I can put a creature in the graveyard and then but they're all 5 drops.
This is a card I think Wizards gives, they want. Inspired, I think, is not a great mechanic. I've not liked it ever since I've really seen it, but you've always kind of wanted it to get there. You're like, but maybe if this happens and that happens, it'll be good. No, it'll be bad. For me, I was like, man, if this said tap, that would be unbelievable. I would get rid of my Pack Rat to go get a Doomblade, and Legacy, I would go get rid of my Batterskull to get a Force of Will. It would be insane.
Well, what I was waiting for, and to be honest, I really was this set. I thought there was going to be, last in Ravnica, the Selesnya ability of tap this creature and another creature to do this effect.
Right.
I really thought they would bring back at least something along those lines just to make the Inspired guys powerful, because none of the Inspired abilities feel super broken except for Gold Digger.
Right.
And every other one, its effect is fine, but if it's active, it doesn't seem too broken. But with this card, it's just
I mean, it's just you have to have the right mana on turn 2, and that's if you get him on, if you have him early, and then he has to swing, and they have to not kill him, and then he has to untap, and then you have to have that ability be relevant. You have to have something in your hand.
You have to have the toolbox.
Yeah, that you want to get rid of, and that you're going to go get, and it has to be better than what you're getting rid of. And I mean, all these things. This card is it's a Johnny card. It's made for for people who want to play around Springleaf Drum and have fun, being able to sort of switch in and out of what you're doing. But in terms of limited or even constructed, this is not getting there.
I think it's going to be good and limited. Everything's a 1-of, everything's already fringe, and it's a 1/3. I would definitely play this card in limited. If I wouldn't first pick it, but if I see it 6th, then I already have a black and a couple blue cards, I will take it and potentially be in that color, because I mean it's awesome. You can just turn anything into the best card on that curve.
Yes.
I attack with it. The thing about limited is, you're going to be able to attack even if they block. It's going to get that on tap. And now you turn your 5-drop into a Prognostic Sphinx, for example, and then all of a sudden you get your best card out of your deck.
But with only 3 toughness and the ability that it might not actually hit on turn 2 because of the tough mana requirements, it's probably going to die. Yes, if you get to attack, and yes, if they don't block, and yes, if you untap, and yes, if you have the 5. You know what I mean?
But then you just continue. Then you just continue playing limited. I think the upside in limited is stronger than the potential of it doing nothing.
Fair enough. Karanos, God of Storms, yeah! Go from a crappy gold to an amazing gold.
I will say this.
I love this card.
I think it is great. I think this card could see play, but you're going to have to wait 6 months.
you're going to have to get Return to Ravnica out of here.
You just need to. Like, Sphinx's Revelation is just too powerful.
It's just too good.
And like, I don't want to put this in a Sphinx's Revelation deck because you know what I want to do is I want to interact with my opponent every single turn and then rev them out of the game. I don't need the card advantage that this card provides or the removal that this card provides. And the biggest reason why I say that is I want to wait until Mutavault rotates because this card can't interact with Mutavault. And if I'm going to play something that's like this clunky in a control deck, I want it to interact with a card that every deck has.
I don't know if it's going to quite necessarily need for Return to Ravnica to rotate to see play, but I think for it to shine, for it to be like, oh man, Karanos decks are like really sweet, I think you're going to have to let Return to Ravnica get out of here. Of course, that obviously depends on what the next fall set is, which they haven't even told us about yet, so we'll see. But
you just know Huey will be in it.
Yeah, Huey will be there. Karanos by himself, though, is incredibly powerful. Easily, probably the second or the third best god, depending on where you put Aroas and Athreos or whatever, and we'll talk about them later. But there's no doubt it is sexy to get a lightning bolt or a free card, and it doesn't really matter if this guy's attacking or not. And if he is attacking, a 6/5 is sweet.
I would be so shocked if I ever see this guy like have legs. Like, there's just
I wouldn't be
there's
shocked.
not a lot of blue and red permanents. Maybe there's a counter burn deck that could potentially get out there.
Now, while we said that Athreos, it took us a little bit to talk about him being good in limited, this thing is insane in limited.
Oh, yeah.
Unreal in limited. If you can cast it, you play it, no question. Card is unbelievable. I'll bolt your thing or I'll get a free card.
Yeah,
Amazing.
The only thing I forewarn is unless this set shakes up limited, blue-red has always been a trap. Like, blue-red and green-red were just two color combinations that were traps. Like, you would go into them, but they were always the worst color combinations.
Sure.
And this, I feel like, unless something changed in this set, I do think that it's a trap color combination, and it just doesn't have the capabilities that the other decks have.
I'll splash for it. It's okay.
All right.
Me and Karanos, we're cool.
That's fine.
I will splash all day. Storm Chaser Chimera, another card I think is really sweet. This is another blue-red card. Again, it could be a trap in the color, but it is one of those cards I think actually it rewards you for playing those color combinations in ways that nothing else really has.
I think that this card is good because when you just have a bunch of mana and you're trying to win races, this card can really do that for you. Also, you could have scryed, like let's say on their turn, and you have a big card on top of your deck, so you untap before you draw it, you then tap the mana to get that big
But also know
benefit.
Also know you can do it twice. You know what I mean? Like this isn't limited to once a turn. Like 4 mana. Oh, that's like a 6-drop. Sweet, 4 more mana plus 6 more. Let's do this. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Is gross.
Absolutely. So then you just 14 with this guy. So like he's got a lot of potential. But again, just one of those blue-red cards that make blue-red not embarrassing to play in limited.
No, yeah, I think that this is one of the cards that could potentially help the color combination in the whole block.
Absolutely. Chariot of Victory. We're gonna ride this thing.
Oh yeah, this is one of the better bad equipment. Like, and I say bad equipment as in like if it's not skull clamp, it's a bad equipment.
Oh,
or
whatever.
plating.
Oh, come on. Not
or
Batter
a sword,
Skull.
or a sword of X and X.
Exactly, right. But whatever. This card is one of those where it says, for the rest of the game, all of your creatures have kicker 1, give it first strike, trample, and haste.
Yeah, and that's just super powerful.
Yes.
That means all your top decks are live, and when your opponent has to fear that all your guys on the top of your deck are haste, the game changes dramatically.
Oh yeah.
And so they might hold a 2/2 back in case something bad happens, but because this gives trample, it's huge. Like
First strike and trample is an amazing pairing of abilities.
Yeah. I mean, the only problem I have with this card for limited is it should be called Chariot 2 Victory because it's going to be the way you get there every single time.
You're gonna see some good things come out of this card. Now here's a question: if you had 2 of these, would you play both of them?
No.
See, that's the difference to me. Is when you have, again, it's an amazing card, but when you have 2 of them, it starts to somehow get bad, which is a really sort of weird thing to understand as a Magic player. That card is amazing, but in multiples, not really amazing. But as a one of, it's where you want to be.
Oh yeah, I think this card will be very good as one of.
Temple of Epiphany. I'm getting an Epiphany. This is going to see a lot of constructed play.
And I'm getting an Epiphany. I don't like the art.
It's like that. It's like the opposite of that ball that you would touch for the static electricity to make your hair stand up.
Yeah.
That thing. It's like the opposite of that. It goes outwards instead of being all inside it.
So the thing that I thought about was that this was actually the Colosseum, and it was like some god was raising out of it. That's how I felt first when I saw the art. Like I know that's not what it is,
Sure.
but it kind of feels like it looks like Colosseum-esque.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be a good card. It does help with blue-red decks, but we haven't seen any. And like everyone's been fiending for Temple of Malady.
Yeah.
I mean, mostly Brian Kibler and his followers.
Well, of course.
Yes.
I think this card is actually going to see a ton of play and allow a lot of blue-red decks, or blue-white decks rather, to splash red. To be able to say, well, we'll just put in just this a little bit. We'll have a few Temple of Triumph, I think is the red-white one, and then a few, and Temple of Epiphanies, and be able to splash, whatever it is we want, whether it's Kuranos, whether it's something else, whether it's even, Warleader's Helix or something in your blue-white deck. This is a card I think actually does a lot of good things for control decks that want it.
If I can have the floor for 30 seconds.
This
is a pretty bad rant, to be honest, but this is just a nitpicky kind of thing. You actually don't want this card in your blue-white control deck splashing red for the fact that Temple of Triumph casts Supreme Verdict, and you're going to have blue sources. So I don't want too many of my sources in my deck to come into play tap that can't cast Dissolve, as well as that don't cast Supreme Verdict. So this is a land that comes to play tap, so it can't be a turn 3 land to be able to play your counterspell magic. But at the same time, if it's your mana development in the early turns.
So if it was my turn 2 play, it's sweet.
No. I'd still rather be a Temple of Enlightenment or a Temple of Triumph. Like, this one is the worst of the 3 for an American control.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying, well, I don't know if I go that far. I think a Temple of Triumph still has, it can kind of fight this level sort of head-to-head a little bit because, blue is very powerful. Blue-red is not terrible, and particularly what the red cards are trying to give you in those types of decks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if there is a deck that's just like 2 color, I think this is where you're at. But like, you don't want to run 12 temples unless you have Thoughtseize, because you need to interact with your opponent on turn 2. I guess you have Magma Spray, that might be potentially playable.
And we'll talk about that soon.
Yeah, or Chain to the Rock. But you can't go Temple, Chain to the Rock. Sorry, I get into brew mode sometimes.
He does. It's all about them brews, which is fantastic. But with Temple of Epiphany, that is the final card of our blue Journey into Nyx Set review.
And now I have time to brew before tomorrow.
Yes, you do. It's very exciting. I'm having a good time. I think we're finally in the groove.
Oh, for sure.
I'm ready to run it back. We're going to be back here with the black cards very soon. For Evan Irwin,
Brad Nelson.
tapping the cards.
So you don't have to.
See ya.